Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description, in every episode description to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say I'm watching so-and-so show, and then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it, and that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic, one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. One mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 2, Episode 2. It's called Chapter 10 of HBO's Perry Mason. Again, I'm just going to reiterate how much I love not having to talk about a title. So I'm just going to get right into talking about this episode. And I want to start by saying last week's episode did a really good job of the task that it had. You know, this show was off for nearly 3 years. It's a long fucking time, man. We need to be reintroduced to those characters and informed of what they've been up to in the time since we last saw them, right? We also needed the start of a new case for this season, and I think last week's episode understood the assignment and it did its job, and I think it did a good job of that. But this week's episode, on the other hand, gets the ball moving on Season 2 and this season's case, and I think this episode does a lot of work. It introduces us to some new characters, some new character arcs, and I think it introduces a shit ton of questions and mysteries surrounding every single last character, their motivations, how far they're willing to go, how they're going to factor into the main storyline, all sorts of good stuff. So, I don't know if this is going to be my strategy for covering the show for the entire season, but my plan right now for this episode, I think the best way to do this is the best way to tackle this episode is to talk about each character. Not each character, but to break down the episode by character, by each of the main characters, Della, Perry, and Paul. So before I get into that, though, I want to talk a little bit about some of the things we learned this week, and then I'm going to get, not some of the things we learned this week, but some of the things we learned that don't necessarily tie in to these characters specifically. So kind of like overall stuff, and then we're going to get into the meat of the episode by talking about each of these main characters, you know, especially because they're all tied into this Brooks McCutcheon story in some kind of way, but it's just that they also have their own plot lines going on as well, and I like to explore that kind of stuff too. So before I get into the characters, though, like I said, let's talk about what we learned that's non-character specific. We learned that the two boys, arrested for Brooks' murder are Rafael and Mateo Gallardo. They're 18 and 20 years old, respectively. Their aunt Luisa and Mateo's wife Sophia, they show up at Perry's office. They want to hire him and his team to defend the boys. I'm going to call them the boys. I'm not going to call them Rafael, Mateo, Gallardo. I'm not going to do all that shit. I'm not even going to say the Gallardos. I'm going to say the boys. So when I say the boys, I'm talking about the Gallardo brothers. They want to hire Perry and his team to defend the Gallardo brothers. just completely contradicted what I just said. Because they heard of what he did for, he being Perry, for Emily Dotson. And that's interesting because, mind you, Perry is currently quietly carrying the knowledge and guilt of knowing that Emily killed herself after this whole situation. So I think that's going to come into play as well a little bit later. We also meet Thomas Milligan. He's the assistant DA set to prosecute this case. Milligan, the judge, and many others that have some sort of affiliation with this case clearly have a strong desire to hold these two brown kids accountable for the murder of this wealthy white man. And all I'm left to think is like, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Like, no no surprises there. But I think there's very clearly a big class/race theme that's going to be going on this season, and that I'm sure we'll be exploring. And the biggest and most obvious sign of that is how thirsty everyone is to kill these two brown kids over this rich white man. You know, these two, the Gallardo brothers, are very much guilty until proven innocent, at least at this point so far in the season. But let's get into this character breakdown. Well, not character breakdown. I'm not going to break down the characters. But let's get into this episode breakdown based on the characters. And, of course, I want to start with the show's lead, or the main character. The lead is Matthew Rhys. But the main character, Perry Mason. So when we next see Perry, after the whole Gallardo family leaves him to ask him to do the case or whatever, he's talking about the case with Pete Strickland. And Pete tells him that Milligan, the assistant DA I just talked about, plans to make an example/career of the brothers and their case. He also mentions like a gold coin that Brooks had, and we later learned that one of the Gallardo boys found that coin in Brooks's wallet in a trash can, and the other one tried to tell him to put it back, but he tried to pawn it. And that's essentially they part of how they got caught was pawning that, trying to pawn Brooks's gold coin. And Perry even says like, I'd have tried to pawn it too. But Pete also mentions that Brooks was not shot point blank, but that he was shot at range, which is very intriguing to Perry. So much so that it leads to a very interesting scene that we still don't fully understand the scope of what all this scene is going to mean. But Perry breaks into the impound lot where Brooks's car is stored at, and he does like these weird measurements and angling with this tape measure, and it looks like he's trying to figure out the plausibility of Brooks being shot at that angle that the bullet appears to have hit him from because of how it passed through the windshield. Because we see like a hole in the windshield, all this good stuff. So somehow he gleans from his measurements that it was not possible for them to have shot Brooks. And I feel like him having already gleaned that feels like, it's like in episode, so early in the episode, he's like, oh, the likelihood of them being able to do that in like the dark, from kind of far away, and they're young. But then he does the measurements, and he's like, yeah, it's no way. And I'm like, you don't even know how tall these guys are. Like, how do you know there's no way? But he deduces they couldn't have done it. And like I said, that's one of the first things that intrigues me is how he comes to that conclusion based on what we saw. But I also want to know, after that, he goes to visit the boys, and he has them like hold the tape measure. He does the angling again. I'm just like, what is he learning from this? Like, it feels like, okay, yeah, he's very clearly trying to, like, I guess, measure the distance and the angle that the bullet went. But I'm like, to what end? Like, I don't understand how this tells him anything about either of the shooters unless he can glean that they are too tall or too short to have shot a gun from that angle. I don't know, but super interested to see where that's going. We also see the opening of the case, which I thought was interesting too. Like it's not technically the opening of the case, but it's the bail hearing. And I was kind of surprised they did that in episode 2, but Perry makes light work of fucking this seemingly green Milligan DA until he realizes that all of his slick talk, logic, and sound reasoning don't mean shit if you got a racist and prejudiced-ass judge and prosecutor. So Perry looks great as a lawyer, but it doesn't fucking matter because the judge has no intention of letting these two out on bail because they're brown and poor. Because it's important. I don't want to just make it race. It's also because they're poor. Like they go to great lengths to let us know they're Mexican and they're poor. But Perry also learns from a reporter after the fact that apparently one of the brothers' prints was found on Brooks' car. Now, he says that must be true. I don't know if that's true, but we'll see. It should be really interesting to see why Brooks was targeted, who targeted him, and how Perry is going to cover up everyone's not cover up, but make up for everyone's passionate desire to kill these two innocent brown people, regardless of whether or not they deserve it. Although, am I being equally racist by assuming that these two didn't do it? Like, maybe they did do it, and they're just lying about it. There's a whole lot of season left, y'all. And it could also be interesting to see if the Gallardo brothers, now I've called them that more than I've called them the boys, were targeted specifically. Like we could set these two up for this, and if so, why? Or did they being like the DA and whatnot just happen to luck out by finding two scapegoats who just so happen to be brown, so it's no way anyone's gonna give a fuck anyway. Like I'm curious if they were sought out specifically or if they were just really fucking unlucky. Let's see. Perry and Della also discover that Brooks's casino boat, the Morocco, was racking up a lot of debt, and I'm not 100% clear on what Della was explaining, but it sounds to me like they avoided paying off the debts by transitioning the ownership to different people. Well, Brooks avoided paying off the debt by transitioning the ownership to different people. And I think that's how Brooks got Holcomb to help him. Because you remember he mentioned something last week about Holcomb being involved in that boat fire that we saw. And then Holcomb mentioned something about being co-owner. And I'm wondering if, like, he's co-owner of something that he thinks is profitable but doesn't know it's in massive. Like, he doesn't know. Like, does he know what Brooks is doing with, like, avoiding paying the Morocco's debt? Is that how Holcomb is involved? Two, does he know? Does he not? Is he being tricked? Like, does he think he's just getting ownership of a boat and he's like, he doesn't know it's in massive debt? Or does he know it's in massive debt? Furthermore, Perry finds Holcomb in the bowels of the ship talking about something shady. Clearly, you don't discuss stuff in the engine room behind a whole bunch of vats and pipes. You don't discuss something on the up and up, in that area, right? Could Holcomb have had Brooks killed because of the debt the boat owes? He's a cop. He clearly have the ability to do something like that and to cover it up. But then wouldn't that debt, if he is co-owner, wouldn't that debt now fall to him? So why would he do something that would make him, like, why would he find out, like, oh shit, I'm now in a bunch of debt with Brooks. Let me kill Brooks, so now I'm in debt by myself. Like, so I don't know if that's what it is, but I feel like Holcomb's involved in this, and maybe he found out some stuff about Brooks that might have pushed him there. Holcomb tries to capture Perry on the boat, but it leads to a great scene where Perry does this whole performance on the boat, casino floor of the boat, that draws everyone's attention to him and to Holcomb. And he even takes it down to, like, my name's Perry Mason. You might know my face. And it's like, I want to give a shout out to, obviously he didn't say I want to give a shout out in 1933. I found out it's 1933. I want to give a shout out to Eugene Holcomb. He's a great cop for the Los Angeles Police Department. And he looks like that man. Like the way he does it so over the top. I thought it was really funny. I thought it was really creative, and I like seeing him get out of that sticky situation in a very Bugs Bunny-esque way. Like I thought that was really cool. So moving on to Della. Della opens up this episode running around town with the DA, Hamilton Berger, as his beard. I don't know if I say the term beard, do you guys know what I'm talking about? But it's basically, well, we know, okay, so the DA's gay, Della's gay. They're running around pretending to be together to cover up the fact that they're both gay. That's what's going on here. But I feel like her being the DA's beard is going to be really fucking useful this season with the whole situation with the Gallardos and Milligan. And she tries to be useful with it when we see her, because she tries to get him to agree to a plea deal. And that's how we learn that he too has no interest in helping the boys, because he has no interest in this plea deal, even though the plea deal includes life in prison. She's like, hey, how about life? But you can't, like, he's just like, no, fuck that. I want death. Like, I know it kind of feels like everybody's in on this. Like, it's not even just like, oh, Berger is just naturally racist and he just wants death for these two kids. Like, I feel like he might be in on it too. I don't know. She then takes a doll that the Gallardo little girl, Maria, who I believe is the one that discovered Brooks' body, left at the office back at their, she left the doll at the office, and Della takes it back to their house. It's a stretch to call it a house, but it takes it back to the place that they live. It's they say it's like a vagrant town where they call them vagrant, and I feel like they probably call them vagrant because even now, even though it's set in 1933, in 2023, saying homeless isn't a good look, so they called it like a vagrant town or something like that. But what it seems to me is like a town that a bunch of homeless people got together and built, and they built these little makeshift homes, and they just have this place that they live. And she goes to take them back this doll, and I think it's interesting how, like, everyone knows Della just wanted an excuse to go back there, but they never make that clear explicitly. And Della even pretends like that's not even why she's there when they ask if she came to take the case. She's like, pretends to be confused. And she's like, I just wanted to bring the doll. And it's like, she couldn't even convincingly lie. Like, and I thought that was nice work by Rylance, I believe is the Juliet Rylance, I believe is the actress who plays Della. It's like, she has this kind of like, the jig is up. Is it that obvious that I'm just making an excuse to come here? Like, I really want to do this case, but I'm subconsciously trying to tell myself that I don't. Well, no, I'm trying to tell myself that I don't, but I subconsciously do. And that's why I'm here pretending like it's about this doll, but we all know it's not. Like, that's what it felt like. And she conveyed all of that on her face. I thought that was really great. But this reminds me of two things I noticed. One, in this scene, they point out that Raphael draws. I thought the pictures were really good. We see the pictures. I don't know if this is going to play into the show anyhow, but I just thought it was interesting. It seemed like a thing that you don't just point out for no reason. Like, oh, I see he draws really well. Yeah, he wanted to go to art school or some shit. Like, I feel like that's going to matter. And then I also noticed when Perry visited them that Raphael has, like, scarring on his neck on one side. And I don't, like, what's that about? Like, unless the actor has scarring, they added that for a reason. And I looked up the actor. He doesn't have scarring. So that's me. This is why you guys watch me, right? You don't watch these other motherfuckers, the ones who like just show you like highlights of the show while they talk over it, hiding behind the pictures because they scared as shit. They don't have any personalities. They just show you the pictures and explain to you what you're seeing or what you saw. This is why you watch me, because I'm the one that's going to tell you, I looked up that actor. He doesn't have neck scarring. They added that scarring for a reason. That shit's going to come up again later. You're not going to get that from these other motherfuckers. That's why you watch me. But one other thing of note in this scene, I didn't like how Sophia, who is Mateo's wife, randomly speaks English when it's the absolute most important, and the whole rest of the time she speaks Spanish. I don't like, either have her speak Spanish or don't, or have her like brokenly move back and forth between one or the other. Don't have her speak Spanish the whole time. And then when it's really, really, really important, you really don't want Della to leave, then she speaks perfectly good fucking English. I don't like that. Della later goes to a boxing match with her side piece, Anita. Della's got a lot going on, man. She's the DA's beard. She's cheating on Hazel. So she's juggling two women while she's playing a beard to a man. Like, I don't know how she could even go out with Anita, since anyone who knows Hazel or the DA could dime her out. Like, she's doing way too much. And, like, I don't even think the show is accurately conveying how fucking messy Della is right now. And I think it's like, oh, we put her in a nice pencil skirt and a hat, and it seems super fucking dignified how fucking messy she's being. No, she's being absolutely fucking messy. And I don't like that for Della. It doesn't feel like it fits within her character. I know they're doing this whole thing where they're like, she's in like a boring relationship and she needs some liveliness. And like, one, that's a weak justification for cheating. Like, oh, I'm bored and I want some liveliness. Like, why don't you just break up with the person and whatever? But like, I don't know. I feel like this doesn't fit the classical, distinguished, kind of classy character that Della plays to have her be this messy. Like she's doing very much the white 1930s version of like Real Housewives of Atlanta type shit. Like, I don't know. I don't think it's a good look for Della. But hopefully it won't be a big angle. I don't know. Especially since nothing came out of the boxing scene other than her referencing something she learned at the boxing match when she's talking to Perry in like the next scene. Other than that, nothing really came from it other than more evidence of she's really fucking messy. Like, why would you go to, like, that's like if I was cheating on my wife and I'm famous and then I go to like a Floyd Mayweather fight. Like, everybody's gonna see me with with the other chick, and knowing that I'm married. Like, everybody knows that everybody supposedly knows she's with the DA, but she's out at this boxing match with Anita. Meanwhile, Hazel, who knows where the fuck she's at? They showed her one time sleeping. Like, I don't know. I know I'm doing a lot with ranting about this, but I don't know. I just don't feel it. It's a very minor complaint, though. I do like, though, how when she returns to the office, her and Perry essentially learn, like, yo, we the same person. Like, they're like the fucking Spider-Man meme where they're pointing at each other. Neither of them could stay away from the Gallardo case. Perry went to the car, to the prison. She went to go deliver the doll to the aunt and the mom and the wife. So they were both drawn into looking into it. They both kept what they were doing from the other person. And they both come to the same conclusion that they should take the case based off of their sneaky little dealings. Like, I like the fact that like in that moment we go like, okay, they're the same. Like, I like this. And inevitably, like, they gonna fuck, right? Come on. And then lastly, before I get to my thoughts anyway, my character breakdown piece, I want to talk about Paul. We first see Paul this week. He meets with Pete to give him all the info that he got on Melvin Perkins. I keep wanting to call him Melvin Van Peebles. Melvin Perkins. He basically says, like, you know, I didn't really find anybody that wanted to kill him. No hits, nothing like that. He's doing some standard low-level crimes for someone of his stature, but I kind of fuck with dude because he puts that money back into the community anyway, so, like, nothing to see here. And then Pete sets him up to be paid. He's like, good job. And the way he says good job seems super suspicious to me. Like, for you to ask this kind of, I don't want to call it a favor, but give him this job, essentially be told, yeah, nothing to see here, and then go, good job. Like, it felt suspicious. And then we later come to find out that Pete used that info to have Melvin arrested. And then that means he essentially used Paul as a black man, because he was black, and he wouldn't be suspicious. Pete couldn't do that himself as a white man, to get dirt on Melvin, and he used Pete to make it happen. And the fact that he said there was a hit on Perkins to get Paul to do it is particularly shitty as well, I think. But the question is, why did Pete want to catch this Melvin guy? Especially to the point of, like, lying to Paul to get him to do it. Is Melvin somehow involved with this Brooks case too, or the main story? Or is this just like a B plot for the season, where it's going to be like, okay, we need to have Pete Strickland have something to do. Let's get him involved with this Melvin character and Paul, and we'll just have this like as a side plot. I don't know. I also like when Paul's wife said they need to be smarter than the white man is evil. That's real. That's real. And then Paul brings this info to Perry, this info being about what Pete did to him. And Perry essentially offers him a job on their team, working the Gallardo case. And that's really all we get for Paul. He doesn't trust Pete. He definitely doesn't trust Pete, but he doesn't trust Perry yet either. And that's kind of where we leave Paul. So I'm going to wrap up with a couple of quick thoughts, and then I will be done for this week, and I'll see you guys for next week, episode 3. So in this episode, we meet a guy named Charlie Goldstein. He gets served a subpoena. Later, in a particularly gruesome scene, he gets his head popped. Even though we don't see it, he gets his head popped in like a vice. Disgusting. Gross fucking scene. Then some old man, and I don't know who this guy is. Maybe you guys see, I've been writing down names and shit. Maybe I missed this guy in episode 1. I don't know. Some old man gets a call, and he's told that Charlie is dead. And then we see that guy throw a subpoena for Brooks into the fire. I don't know what any of that means. Also, Brooks's dad was at the same party that this old man gets the call at. I don't know. I feel like I feel like everybody here might be involved. And when I say everybody here, I mean the old man who throws out the subpoena and Brooks's dad. But again, I still feel like Brooks's dad being involved is too obvious. Perry goes to what I can only describe as a parent-teacher conference. And he has a brief, lighthearted debate with his son's teacher about trust. I think it was about trust. He has something to the effect of like, I forget what he said about, he said like, don't parents trust you to care for their kids or something like that. And then she says, don't clients trust you to care about them. Something, it's a little banter, right? But then she gives him this like, I want to feel you in that receding hairline deep inside me. Look with her eyes. Which was a wow moment to me because she do it right in front of the kid's mom. And I'm like, they should have had the mom just say like, are you trying to fuck Perry with your eyes at the parent-teacher conference, but have her say like off screen so you just hear it? Like have her make the googly eyes at him and shit. And then you just hear, are you trying to fuck his dad? Like, something like that off screen. That would have been funny. But that was weird that she just like blatantly, like it's almost like the show forgot that the mom was there too. Because that look was super fucking overt. And I'm like, okay, so obviously Perry gonna end up fucking a teacher at some point. But like, I just thought it was like I can't even imagine like a teacher overtly giving the fuck me eyes to a parent while the other parent is sitting right next to them. That's wild to me. Wild. In addition to the Pete Melvin thing being something like, I don't know whether that's a B plot or not, or if it'll tie in. I have the same feeling about Sonny, which is Sean S's character. Like I said, this episode did a lot, man. This angle of him getting a retainer for them to pay for the Gallardo case, and they're paying Sonny Well, I'm sorry, Sonny's paying them to help them with legal fees and shit like that to buy up all these properties. I don't know if that's going to be an entirely additional plot, or we won't explore it at all anymore, and what we really are just meant to take away. This is how they're paying. This is how they're staying afloat financially during the Gallardo case. Oh, right, it's because of the deal that they made with Sonny. Sonny's paying them for this civil shit. Or are we actually going to see them juggling 2 jobs for 1 pay? And is that going to be a plot point too? Like, oh, they're struggling with Sonny, or they're struggling with the Gallardos because they've got too much going on with the other one. I don't know, but that's why this is in the thoughts section. Someone puts a note with a Santa Clara or a Santa Clarita number, Santa Clara number in Brooks' wallet for Perry to find. Lots of questions about that. One, obviously, who was it? They had access to the evidence room, and the cop that was there clearly did not give a fuck about who this person was. But mainly, was that number useful? Or was it meant to steer Perry in the wrong direction, like away from where he's supposed to be going? Interesting. We'll see that, I'm sure, probably next week. We'll probably get some hints on that. And then I think we're meant to believe it's Brooks' dad due to like the coat, the hat, the gloves. But like I said, it seems too obvious. If you're going to dress this shadowy figure like Brooks' dad and then have it actually be his dad, why hide his face? That's how I'm going to end this episode. That's all I got to say. Let me know what you thought in the comments. I will see you guys next week for episode 3. It's clear this one's going to require a lot of me, but I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed writing out these notes. I enjoyed laying out all these theories, all these facts, following this case. This kind of shit just moves me. I like this. I like these these murder cases and shit like that, where it's a lot more, I guess, like, not necessarily just into the legal stuff, but not so much like heavy into the whodunit aspect. Like, I like whodunits, but I don't like I don't know how to say I don't like, but I don't like a whodunit that's so firmly, heavily into the whodunit as much as I like something like this, where it's not as much into the whodunit, but it's giving you a whole lot of stuff to think about. And I really dig that about this show. So like I said, I'll be back for next week for episode 3, and until then, peace.